Learning how to layer your infusible inks with the Cricut mug press is not as difficult as you may think. My name is Kelly, and let's get clacking. We are first going to start in Cricut Design Space by adding a mug template to our canvas. So we can click on Images on the left-hand side of the screen. And now what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to the filters on the left-hand side of the screen to where we see Project Type. We're going to expand that one. And I'm going to check the box for the 12-ounce mug. Now here you can see many ready-to-use mug templates. They're already set up to be the exact size that you need to get a perfect press on your mugs. So they'll look pretty much just like that on the sides. This is a different template that I found on Design Space that somebody else had made, and I absolutely love it. It's my favorite. But if you don't want to use one of these, I like to change one of them up a little bit and make my own. So I'm going to click on the one that I like to use the most, which is the one with the circles, as there isn't one that I've seen that's just a solid mug template that you can use without having to modify it a little bit. So I pick one of the ones that you have to modify the least. And I'm going to add that to my canvas. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the small circles in the middle because I don't need that. And I want to modify this so that I can work with both the square and the outside of the template. So I'm going to duplicate this one by right-clicking and duplicating it. Then I'm going to use the contour feature to remove out the big circles in the middle and the outside of the main template. So that's the part that would be cut out. And on the other one, I'm going to use the contour feature to, again, remove the circles, but then also remove the square. So we have just the outlines. Now we have separated the template into two different parts. The outline, we're going to just put it off the screen because we're not going to work with it right now. And this part we're going to work with in a moment, so I'm just going to put it to the bottom. Now for this mug, I want to have a standard background with words layered on top. So I'm going to open the text function and then click on the font section in the top left to be able to change a font. I always like to use my bookmarked fonts, so I'm going to choose one of those there. And the font that I'm choosing is My Sweet Farmhouse. And I'm going to type up a funny saying that's relevant to me, but you can put whatever you want on yours. And I'm also going to make it quite a bit smaller as we kind of can't see it at the moment. Now, because of the gaps in the lines, even if I had to change the line space to -50, they're still too far apart for what I want. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on the advanced button with the two little squares, and I'm going to ungroup them to lines so that there are 3 separate layers and we can then manually move them closer together. Then I'm going to highlight the words that I've added, and I'm going to add an offset. And as you can see, we have little gaps in the middle here, little white spaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the contour feature and click hide all contours so that it is just one solid object. And I'm going to do the same on this side just to make sure that the offsets remain identical. Now I'm going to size them for the template. So I'm going to select them both, resize them a little bit. I'm going to make sure that my one side that we split into layers has been combined so we can weld that into one layer. And then I'm going to select all of the layers and align them center vertically. Next, what we're going to do is slice this out of the back. In order for this to work properly, we have to make sure to slice the black part out of the blue part so that we can inset them and lay them together. So I'm going to select the layer, the offset, and I'm going to select the frame, and I'm going to click slice. I can't do both phrases at the same time because you can only slice 2 layers, which is unfortunate. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of those layers and I'm going to send them to the back so that we can see what we're working with on the other side. And we're going to do exactly the same process there. So we select the offset, select the back, and we slice that again. And we repeat the same process. So I'm selecting all 3 of the layers in the layer panel. I'm going to right click and send it to the back. So we now have our template that has been cut out. So now we move the template out of our way so we can work with the rest of the layers. And I'm going to select those layers and I'm going to attach them together. Now, yes, I do have both offset sliced results selected at the same time as well. That is intended because it makes it easier for layering a little bit later. And I am going to change the color to something other than black, just so that you can actually see that the words are still there, because that's pretty important. And I'm going to repeat the same process with the other sentiment. So I've selected all of those layers. I'm going to attach them, and I'm going to change the color to match the same color as this one. Now, these will be cut out of black Infusible ink, and this one will be cut out of a fun color. And we need to make sure that this is also lined up. So we're going to align, center, and we're going to attach that as well. We don't want to attach these two pieces together because we can, optimize the space on our mats, which is perfect. And then we can use less media. So we're going to first save our design, and then we're going to click Make It. We do need to make sure that both of the layers have been mirrored. So we need to make sure that we're selecting mirror on the side, as it has the same principles as iron-on or HTV. Once we've optimized the space, we can click Continue, connect to our machine, and select the Infusible ink material. When selecting your Infusible ink transfer sheet, I do recommend that you change the pressure to more. We do need this to cut all the way through, and it is a lot easier once it's actually cut all the way through as opposed to the alternative. So set your pressure to more. It'll also make weeding the Infusible ink a lot easier. And now, of course, we just cut everything on our machines. Remove the protective sheeting on your mat. Place your Infusible ink side up with the shiny side on the mat. Use your brayer to get all of those pesky bubbles out. Make sure to keep your hands as clean as possible before working with the Infusible ink, as you don't want any unnecessary dirt transfer onto the ink. Load your mat into the machine and cut away, making sure to check the cut before you unload your Infusible ink from the machine. And now it comes time to weeding our design. So we're going to take this off the mat by flipping the mat over and removing our Infusible ink. I like to cut these down first before I remove all of the transfer, so I can use these in a future project. And now, in order to remove the Infusible ink in the middle sections, you can pretty much just fold it and it'll come right off in nice big sections, because the design that we've chosen is nice and very easy to work with. So depending on what design you've chosen, this may be difficult or easy. Now, because we did a double cut at more pressure, we should be able to just pull off the edging of the Infusible ink tape. As you can see there, it has a little bit of it's a tape-like substance, and we should be able to just take that off fairly easily, as it didn't come off immediately when we cut. And this makes the layering a lot easier. And now we take off the outside of the letters. I always inspect my sections once I'm done with them, because I've found that if there are little pieces like that sit behind in the projects, then you will get some of the ink transferring. So I always inspect it when I'm done, just to make sure that it is clean and that it will transfer correctly. Now I'm going to take this piece and simply stick it on in the correct direction onto the page. Now make sure to line this up carefully and check all of the edges for a little section that might have overlapped, or a little section of the transfer tape that didn't quite come off correctly, speaking from experience. Now this makes layering text on mugs a lot easier, and little bits and things like that where it's just one solid object, because if you turn it around, it's going to be perfectly aligned and we didn't have to do very much work for it. So we move on to the second one and do exactly the same process. And layer up the next section. If you do have corners that have cut off from the part that you've layered into the other section, don't worry. It's perfectly okay, as long as the transfer sheet of the words is not covering the Infusible ink of the transfer on the back. that would be a problem, but the other way around is not. So now we get out our sublimation or infusible ink ready mug, and while the mug press warms up, we're going to prep the mug. Now, this is not a Cricut mug that I'm using. You can use any sublimation ready mug as long as it is the same diameter as the normal Cricut mugs. But in all honesty, most of the sublimation 12 ounce or 330ml mugs are the same size, so you should be fine with most mugs in the mug press. Now, we make sure that our design is facing up. The text, we should be able to see it quite clearly, and we can then start sticking the pattern to the mug. Now, this is a part where I normally do this several times because I always underestimate how far it needs to go on the one side. So I wrap it all the way around. Try and make sure that it's even on both sides of the mug. You can kind of see, and as always, I've put it too far on that side, so I'm going to pull it back a little bit. If you know of a better method, please let me know in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it, as I am on top of the struggle bus all the time. And while you're there, give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it. We want to make sure that our infusible ink transfer sheet is nice and tight. If you look here, there's a big gap on this side. What will happen if it's not tight against the mug is your design will look hazy. It won't be crisp and clear, and you might even get some marks, like watercolor type marks, from the moisture that goes up into the mug. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen and that it is nice and tight against the mug. Once we are happy with our mug and how our mug actually looks, everything is aligned and even, mostly. I'm going to take my mug press, which has now just warmed up, and I'm going to take a piece of Teflon sheet and I put it inside the mug press as to protect the mug press a little bit. You can also use a piece of copy paper to wrap around the mug. You'll see I've used this copy paper a few times and it works quite well. So I place all of this into the mug press, holding the handle a little bit off to the left, and I try and make sure that the handle is as even on the inside as possible. That's why I hold it a little bit off to the left so that it gets even pressure on both sides. The white dots will then start to tick down. As you can see, it kind of flashes a little bit, and it'll be about 6 minutes or so until the mug is ready. You'll hear the mug press beeping, and then you know that it is ready to take it out. So while that cooks, I'm going to be getting the next step ready, which is a bowl of warm water. There we go. So you've heard the little beep that it'll make, and it'll continue to make this beep until you lift up the handle and pull your mug out. The handle of your mug will be cool enough to touch, and then you can either let it stand on somewhere that is heat resistant, not on this mat, or you can do the impatient method, which is the one that I personally like to use because I'm very impatient. So that's why we have the bowl of warm water. Very important that it mustn't be cold. If you put your mug into cold water, it will crack immediately. So don't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off the transfer sheet, and there you can pretty much already see the full finished product, which is amazing. And now what I like to do is to slowly reduce the heat of the mug. So you probably don't have to do this, but it helps me feel better and reduce the cracking of the mug. At least, like I said, it makes me mentally feel better. Be careful not to touch your mug because it is very, very hot. Then we can place the mug into the water. A bubbling noise is okay, a cracking noise is not. So what this will do is it will stop the infusible ink or the sublimation process. So if you had to take the transfer sheet off and leave the mug to cool down, what will happen is the ink will still be hot and it will travel up the mug and it will cause ghosting. So you want to try and stop that process as soon as possible. Many people leave the transfer sheet on the mug and let it cool down, that is also perfectly okay. But like I said, I'm too impatient for that. So I prefer dipping it in some warm water for a few minutes and then very gingerly testing the mug to see if it is warm enough. That section's still a little bit hot, but that's actually fine. And now our mug is perfectly done. And of course, I love this mug because I'm a decaf girly. My body hates caffeine, so decaf it is for me. Now, if you want to learn a different infusible ink layering method that I used on a pillowcase, check out this video here, as it'll go through a slightly different process step by step. I will see you in my next video, and remember, be kind to someone today. See you soon!